Over 100. That's the number that would forever mark the night Edmund Kemper turned his rage inward, unleashing it on the person who had shaped his life in the darkest ways. That's how many times Edmund Kemper stabbed his own mother. The brutality of the act shocked even the most hardened investigators, leaving a permanent scar on the annals of true crime. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a calculated, brutal act, the climax of years of resentment and psychological torment. Kemper's actions were deliberate, each movement fueled by a lifetime of pain. The violence didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of a toxic, damaging relationship with his mother, Clarnell Strandberg. Their home was a battleground filled with constant conflict and emotional wounds that never healed. Kemper's story isn't just about monstrous acts, it's about the devastating impact of family dynamics on a child's mind. The seeds of violence were planted early, watered by neglect and cruelty. To understand how a son could commit such an unthinkable crime, we have to look back at a lifetime of humiliation, control, and emotional abuse. Every slight, every harsh word built up inside him, shaping the man he would become. Edmund Kemper wasn't a random killer. His crimes were deeply personal, especially the final one. The pain he inflicted was a twisted reflection of the pain he'd endured. The murder of his mother was the event his entire life seemed to be building toward. A gruesome climax rehearsed in his mind for years. It was as if every moment of his troubled past led to that single horrifying night. Kemper was a paradox, polite, articulate, even charming at times, yet capable of monstrous acts. He could switch between warmth and cold detachment in an instant. His ability to detach from his actions is one of the most chilling aspects of his psychology. It's what made him so dangerous and so difficult to truly understand. And it all began with a childhood shaped by a mother he both loved and hated with fatal intensity, a relationship that would ultimately end in tragedy. Edmund Kemper's childhood was marked by conflict and cruelty, a turbulent environment that left deep scars on his young mind. His mother, Clarnell, was domineering and relentlessly critical, constantly belittling him for his size and appearance, making him feel unwanted and unloved in his own home. After his parents' bitter divorce, things only worsened. Clarnell, who struggled with alcoholism, forced Edmund to sleep in a locked, cold basement, claiming she feared for his sister's safety, but really isolating him from the rest of the family. This harsh isolation sent a clear message: you are dangerous. You don't belong, and you are not worthy of love or trust. Alone in the basement, Edmund's world shrank to those four walls, and his resentment and loneliness grew with every passing day. He developed violent fantasies as a way to cope, imagining scenarios where he could finally stand up to his mother and escape her control, his mind retreating into a world of dark daydreams. The line between fantasy and reality began to blur, and the boundaries that kept his anger in check started to dissolve. Clarnell's relentless emotional abuse warped his sense of self-worth, teaching him he was fundamentally unlovable and that nothing he did would ever be good enough. He craved her approval, desperately seeking even a hint of affection, but received only contempt and coldness in return. This toxic mix of dependency and hatred defined him, setting the stage for the violence and darkness that would follow in his later years. The basement wasn't just a room, it was the crucible of his rage, a place where his pain and anger were forged into something far more dangerous. The trauma and isolation he experienced there would shape the rest of his life, casting a long, dark shadow over everything that came after. As Edmund grew, so did his problems. By his teens, he was over 6 feet tall, but remained a lonely, insecure outcast. At 15, his mother sent him to live with his grandparents, hoping strict discipline would help. Instead, the same patterns repeated. His grandmother was critical and controlling, fueling his resentment. The tension exploded on August 27, 1964. After an argument, Edmund shot and killed both grandparents. Calmly, he called his mother, then the police. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he was sent to Atascadero State Hospital. There he convinced psychiatrists he was cured, displaying intelligence and cooperation. At 21, he was released, against some staff's advice, back into his mother's care. The system failed to see the danger. The seeds of violence had only been buried, not removed. Kemper's return home would prove catastrophic. The monster was about to be unleashed. After his release from the institution, Kemper returned to Santa Cruz, once again moving in with his mother, Clarnell. The familiar streets and quiet neighborhoods of California seemed unchanged, but beneath the surface, Kemper's inner turmoil was growing. Outwardly, he appeared to be a gentle giant, polite, intelligent, and eager to build a normal life. Neighbors saw him as a helpful presence, someone who tried to fit in and make amends for his past. But the toxic dynamic with Clarnell resurfaced almost immediately. Their arguments grew more frequent and intense, and the cycle of humiliation and emotional abuse continued, fueling Kemper's resentment. Desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home, Kemper began cruising the highways, searching for a sense of control. He picked up young female hitchhikers, masking his dark intentions behind a friendly smile. Between May 1972 and April 1973, he murdered 6 young women. He lured them into his car with his calm demeanor, only to reveal his true violent nature. The brutality of his crimes shocked even seasoned investigators. He brought their bodies back to his mother's apartment, a twisted sanctuary where he could relive his crimes in secret, hidden from the world. These murders were an expression of his deep-seated rage, not just at his victims but symbolically at his mother, who had tormented him for years. The community was gripped by fear, terrified as the co-ed killer prowled the streets, hiding in plain sight. No one suspected the monster lived among them. Kemper even socialized with local police, discussing the case as if he were just another concerned citizen. He listened closely, always staying one step ahead. He lived a double life, helpful giant by day, sadistic murderer by night. The contrast was chilling, and no one saw through his mask. All the while, his mother remained completely oblivious to the horror unfolding under her own roof, never suspecting her son's monstrous secret. But the ultimate target of his rage, the one he blamed for everything, was still to come. On April 20th, 1973, Kemper's rage reached its horrifying peak. After a heated argument, he waited until his mother slept, then attacked her with a hammer and knife, over 100 wounds. This was more than murder. It was a final, brutal rejection of the woman he blamed for his pain. The violence was personal, intimate, and deliberate. Afterward, he committed grotesque acts meant to humiliate her, even in death. But the act brought no relief, only emptiness. The next morning, when his mother's friend Sally Hallett visited, Kemper killed her too, fearing discovery. He hid both bodies in the house, which had become a tomb. The climax of his life's rage had passed, leaving only silence and 2 more victims. Kemper was now utterly alone, surrounded by the consequences of his violence. The final act was over, but the story was not yet finished. The world still had no idea what he had done, and Kemper was left to face the void he'd created. With 2 bodies in the house, Kemper felt a strange calm. He cleaned up, packed his car, and fled east, expecting a manhunt. But the news was silent. No one had discovered the crime. The lack of pursuit left him feeling empty, his grand statement unnoticed. In Pueblo, Colorado, he made a decision. He couldn't run anymore. From a payphone, he calmly called Santa Cruz police and confessed. At first, they didn't believe him. He had to convince them he was the co-ed killer. He detailed all 8 murders, providing information only the killer would know. The police were stunned. The man they'd been hunting had turned himself in. Kemper waited quietly for arrest, the chase over before it began. His confession would shock investigators and the public alike. The monster had revealed himself, not with violence, but with chilling calm. The story was about to enter its final chapter. In custody, Kemper was eerily cooperative, eager to discuss his crimes. He spoke with chilling clarity about his life, motivations, and the hatred for his mother that fueled his violence. His confession was a goldmine for investigators and psychologists, revealing a mind capable of both profound violence and rational analysis. The trial was a formality. His detailed confession left no doubt. The defense argued insanity, but the prosecution highlighted his planning and awareness. The jury found him sane and guilty on 8 counts of first-degree murder. Kemper requested the death penalty, but it was suspended in California. He was sentenced to life at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. The man who terrorized Santa Cruz was finally locked away, but his story would continue to haunt and fascinate for decades. In prison, Kemper became a model inmate, channeling his intelligence into reading and recording audiobooks for the blind. He recorded thousands of hours, his unsettling voice bringing literature to others. He gave numerous interviews, providing rare insight into the mind of a serial killer. His openness helped the FBI develop criminal profiling techniques. Yet Kemper showed no real remorse, only intellectual regret, never genuine empathy. He saw himself as a victim of his mother's abuse, incapable of true remorse for his own victims. This lack of empathy kept him behind bars, where he remains today in his 70s. He's waived parole, accepting he's too dangerous for release. The co-ed killer now lives a quiet, routine life, a chilling relic of a dark era. His story remains a permanent warning of the violence that can hide behind a normal face. Edmund Kemper's case is more than a true crime story. It's a dark reflection on the consequences of childhood trauma and family dysfunction. His mother's relentless abuse didn't excuse his actions, but it shaped the monster he became. The young women he killed were surrogates for his mother. Her murder was the horrific finale. The case exposes the failures of the psychiatric and justice systems. Kemper manipulated experts and was released with deadly results. It's a stark reminder of how difficult it is to understand and contain psychopathy. Kemper's story challenges our notions of good and evil, forcing us to confront the complexity of human darkness. By studying cases like his, we hope to recognize the shadows before tragedy strikes again. The people who commit monstrous acts are still people, shaped by a web of nature, nurture, and circumstance. Understanding the darkness doesn't excuse it, but it may help prevent it. For more deep dives into the cases that haunt us, subscribe to our channel.